Hi, I am Narendra Modigari. Welcome to the second lecture on interacting with the database. In the last video, we discussed how to interact with the database. We use sign in button and sign up button, and we discussed how to store data into the database as well as how to retrieve data from the database. In this video, we are going to develop an application for a vegetable shop where a user can select whatever the items he wants from the list of items available, as well as he can specify the quantity and he can add item to the cart. So once he add item to the cart, it will show you the recently added item, its quantity and its value. Price of the current item will be added to the total value. You can select any number of items you want as well as quantity. If you click add item button, the value of this item will be added to the total cost. So this is the recently selected item and its value is added to the total cost. So once you place order button, the order will be finished and the total amount will be displayed here. You can place any number of orders you want. This is what we are going to do now. We will divide this whole application process into 5 steps. The first step is we need 2 tables, items table and orders table. The items table will have the list of items available for a user to select while placing an order. The orders table is to store whatever the orders a user is placing. So the first step is to create 2 tables and populates items table with a list of items available in the vegetable market. Then design a drop-down component and populate this with all the values retrieved from the database, with all the values available in the vegetable market. When add item button is pressed, the item has to be added to the total price. And also add cost of current selection to the total order value. And when a user place order button, order should be finished and it has to wait for the next order, displaying the total value of the previous order. Okay, let's do one by one. Create our project, rename the project however you want. I am renaming this as vegetable market. Save it. So this is empty project. Let's do this. The first step we have to do is create 2 tables. Go to the data section, create 2 tables. Items table. The item table should have 2 columns, item name and the price of each item. Price of each item. So these are the 2 columns that we need for items table, and here you populate this table with the list of vegetables available in the vegetable market. Let's say potato and its price is 40 for 1 kilo. Don't forget to keep inside double quotes as it is a string. Okay. Let's say tomato and define the price for tomato. Let's say 30 rupees per kilo. Add one more vegetable. It's a carrot. The price of carrot is 80 rupees. Add one more vegetable, brinjal, and its price is 25 rupees. Okay. Now, so these are the list of items available in vegetable market, and the price of each item is also here, and the price of each item is also given. Potato is 40 rupees per kilo, tomato is 30 rupees, carrot is 80, brinjal 25. Let's add onion also. Let's say it is 70 rupees per kilo. So these are the list of items available. Let's populate these items into the drop down list. So we need a drop down list here. Go to the design section and drag and drop a drop down. Resize this as much as you want. Give an ID for this one. Let's say it is drop down 1. And we don't want these options because we are going to select our options from the database. Just keep it as empty. So this is the drop down list and its ID is drop down 1. So when you load an application, all the items from the database has to come and display here. So let's write code here. First, create an empty list of items. So let this as an empty list. Now what you have to do is read all the items from the database. Go to data section, and there is a method called as a read records method. So this read record methods can be used for reading data from the database. Here you have to specify the name of the table from where you are reading the data. So my table name is items. I am going to read all the items from the item table. We don't need this, just remove this. This records contains all the items. So what you have to do is, for every item, you have to append those items to the item list. For appending, there is a method called as append item method. Drag it, and drop it. Okay, the value should be appended to the item list. So give here the name of the list where you would like to append. Okay, and here what items to be appended. The records is a list which contains all the items derived from the items table. We want only item name. That's it. See here, create an empty list. Create an empty list and read items from the items table and append all these items to the empty list. Now this item list is having all the items. So what we have to do is, we have to populate this drop down list using this item list. There is a method called as set property method. You can make use of set property method if you want to assign, if you want to change anything while you are running the program. Set property. So if you don't know what is set property, you can go to the example. Just place a mouse on set property and click see examples. Set property method is useful in the following scenario. Generally, you want to define properties of UI elements using design mode itself. But sometimes you want to change the value of property in your app based on the user or in response to an event. Then you can make use of set property method. So you have all the properties for different types of components. When your program is running, you can change the width, you can change height, you can change its position, you can change its color, you can change its background color, you can change its font size, you can make it as hidden. And if you want to populate your drop down with a list of values, you can make use of a property called as options property. Okay, so the property name is options property to populate your drop down list with a list of values. Okay, this is the ID which you would like to populate. The ID of my drop down is drop down 1. So I would like to populate drop down 1 and the option should be options. Here you can specify what are the values you would like to set to the drop down list. The list of values is nothing but the values already obtained. The value is already obtained and that value is already there in item list. That's it. Create an empty list, read all the values from the table and append them to the empty list. So the list contains all the elements. Populate your drop down list using set property method. Let's run this. Let's check whether it is working or not. See here, this drop down is populated with all the items in the database. So we created items table with 5 items. All the 5 items are displaying here. So that is our second part. The second part is finished. The third part, add some more elements. Add an input for reading the quantity. Go to design mode. We need an input for quantity. Okay, let's give its ID as quantity and make it as 0 in the beginning. We need a button to add items to the cart. Make this as add item button. Add to cart. So whenever user press this add to cart button, it has to place these values into the database. Once a user presses this add to cart button, the current item and its value is supposed to store into the database. So we need another table called as orders table. So create another table called as orders. This should have 3 columns. One is the order ID, another column for item name, and another column for quantity, So we need 3 columns. One is to keep track of order IDs and what item is going to insert into the database, what quantity it is. So once a user press this add to cart button, the data has to be inserted into the orders table. Add an event to this button, add an event to this button. We don't know this. Before inserting data into the database, first read the price of selected item. You need a variable. This variable will store current item price. Let's say initially it is 0. Let's make it as 0 initially when the item is not selected. So whenever an item is selected, first we should know what is the price of this item. So let's read from the database. Because we don't know, the price of item should be read from the database. Go to the data section, read records, and here specify the name of the table from where you are reading. Items table. We don't need this. Specify the name of the table from where you are reading the data, and here you can specify the condition. If you don't specify the condition, all the items will be retrieved. The price of all the items will be retrieved. We don't want price of all the items. We want the price of item which is selected by the user. So you can add the condition. Just go to show text mode. Here we want the price of items whose name is same as the name selected by the user through dropdown. So get text and specify the ID of dropdown. The ID of dropdown is dropdown. If you leave this part as empty, like in second line, it will read all the records from the database. If you don't want to read all the records from the database, if you want to specify the condition before reading, you can specify the condition. Here you need to specify ID. The ID is, let's remove this. Here you need to specify the ID. Let's go to show text. Choose the ID, drop down 1. Okay, this column name, this is the column name, and this is the item name which you would like to retrieve from the database. Okay, so calculate the price of current item. The price of current item is, calculate it, selection. The price of current selection is the price of current item into the quantity. So you need a math expression for finding multiplication. So the price of current selection is the price of selected item which is there in records array, the price of current item multiplied with the quantity. The quantity you can get it from the user interface. Get text, get number. Quantity. So this is the price of current item. So this is the price of current item. So whenever for every item you selected, the price of current item should be added to the total value, total order value. We need one more variable for finding total value. Total order value. Total order value. Initially make it as 0. This is for finding the price of current selection. For every selection, you have to add it to the total price. For every item user selected, the value should be added to the total order value. Previous total value, previous total order value, and the price of current item. That's it. So whenever a user selected an item, so here what we are doing is, for every, whenever a user click add to cart button, know the price of current item, by using this, know the price of current item and add that price to the total price. And as well as you have to store this item into the database. Choose this create record, drag and drop here. Create a record and store the values into orders table. The orders table is having 3 columns. One is order ID, item name and its quantity. So we need one more variable to keep track of order ID. Let's say order ID. Order ID is equal to 0. Start order ID with 1. Every time an item is added to the cart, store that item details into the database. This orders table is having 3 columns. One is order ID. This order ID you can have it from here. Order ID. And we have 2 more columns. One is for item name and its quantity. We have 2 more columns. Whenever an item added to the cart, that item should be stored into the database. And name of the table is orders. It has 3 columns. One is order ID. This order ID is from this. Next one is item name. This item name you can derive from, you can get from UI interface, whatever the items selected by the user from the drop-down list, drop-down one. So this is the second column. The first column is order ID, the second one is item name, and third one is quantity. This quantity is also you can get it from the user interface. So get number from the user interface, and the ID of quantity is quantity. Select quantity as ID. That's it. Let's run this application. The list of items are available. Select any one item, give the quantity and add item to the cart. So when I click add item to the cart, the data has to be stored into the database. So there is an error in line number 15 saying that it is not able to identify total order value. We have spelling mistake here. You have to be very careful with spelling mistakes. See, that's it. We're able to remove the spelling mistake. Let's run this once again. So the list of items is populated. Select any one item, add quantity, add item to the cart. So we have no errors. Let's see whether it is inserted into the database or not. Go to the data section, choose orders. We have one extra column. Let's remove this extra column. Let's remove this. Let's remove this. This is our column name. Order ID is our column name. Let's go to the code section. So this is not order, this is an order ID. Let's check whether it works or not. Let's run this application. Choose any one item. Select the quantity, let's say 4, add item to the cart. So whenever I press add item to the cart button, the value has to store into the database. See, I selected brinjal, the quantity is 4. And if you, let's add one more item, let's say carrot of quantity 3, add it to the cart. It is added to the table. So like this, so we were able to successfully add all these things to the database. In the next video, we will see how to display the currently selected item, the quantity of currently selected item, and the price of current selection, as well as the total order value. Thank you for your presence. Have a nice day.